Hey, my name is Juliana Omi, and I'm back again with another episode of Dear Lovers. I really want to thank all of you who commented on the last episode. Your comments were very interesting and super thoughtful, and I appreciate that so much. Thank you for the feedback. After we get more episodes posted, I will dedicate a whole entire episode to answering some of your questions. I want to say a special thanks to @JoelAustinMac on YouTube. Your comment relayed relevant personal experiences and also included a well thought out and insightful observation. So thank you for spreading some love. God bless you. If you guys want to check out what he wrote in the comments section on YouTube, go and subscribe and leave a comment of your own. I also have a Dear Lovers TikTok account, which I highly recommend that you check out and follow if you don't already at DearXOLovers. On it, you'll find short videos on a variety of topics, many of which I plan to explore in more depth here. Also, I wanted to clarify that generalizations are by definition not all cases. Specific situations involve nuance. Everybody's individual situation involves nuance. It's like when I say breakfast food. When I say breakfast food, do you think of fried rice and beans? I mean, you might if you're from a region that has that for breakfast, but if the majority of my audience is US born, that term creates images of cereal with milk or eggs and bacon or pancakes. The point is that making observations like I do on this podcast requires that I use some generalizations to speak to my audience. And I hope that you can all understand that. Without further ado, let's jump right in. The other day, while I was editing the last episode of the podcast, I started really thinking about hookup culture and how I would define it. I was going to start off with, it's a lazy way to date, but then I had an epiphany. Dating in today's society is people looking for love with no future plans. And that just breaks my heart because as humans, our brain is wired for planning. Planning is just what we do. Thinking about the future and what it holds for us and how we will act in the future we have imagined is a very popular pastime. Who among us has never imagined who their spouse will be or how their children will look or whatever? And maybe that's more common for young people to do, but even the oldest among us were once young, right? And had those thoughts, right? So the question for this episode is, when is it the best time to get married? And I think we should first pick a definition of marriage to use. And I have to pause and just say, how crazy is this world that we live in, where the definition of words and their level of offensiveness is constantly changing? If I was a crazy conspiracy nut, I might think that it was all part of a demonic plan to make people so afraid of saying something that might offend someone to the point that we all end up mute, never sharing any of our ideas and only being able to hear and repeat pre-approved messages from those in charge. Hey, 1984 is calling. They want their Newspeak back. In further homage to George Orwell, I will try to only use Old Speak on this program.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Marriage, that blessed arrangement, that dream within a dream.
Stand your ground, men! Stand your ground!
So here on Dear Lovers, marriage refers to the sacrament of a lasting commitment a man and a woman make with the purpose of establishing a lifelong partnership for the good of each other and with the goal of the procreation and the nurturing of their children. So now that we've cleared that up, when is it the best time to get married? Well, first you have to go through the long and arduous journey of finding someone to marry. Once there are two willing participants, then you can decide when. But what if you didn't have to go through all that hassle? Did you know that the divorce rate for arranged marriages is less than 4%? Where partners chose who to marry on their own, the divorce rate is more than 40%. Now, I'm not saying we should all do arranged marriages, but arranged marriages is an ancient concept, and they're still successfully practiced in certain parts of the world today. The participants in an arranged marriage, and I'm talking about the bride and groom, might not initially like who they are paired with, but they're typically young, so this gives them time to grow and build a life together. That shared process helps to create strong bonds, hence the low divorce rate. I bet some of you are thinking about who your parents would have chosen for you to marry. Would they have been wrong? It's funny because arranged marriages are often depicted as a really bad thing in film and literature. And that fact doesn't quite correlate with the 4% statistic. Now, does it? I remember back in the middle school in Bolivia, there was this scrawny kid who was 2 years older than me. He was extremely awkward and he was pretty much forgettable. I'm sorry if you're listening to this, but he wasn't much different even towards the end of high school. Then I recently reconnected with him, and 2 years into college, he looks like a supermodel and he carries himself with great confidence. Point being, people grow and change, and sometimes for the better. Being young and idealistic can prevent people from seeing the potential in other young people. If the people in charge of arranging the marriage really love and have the best interest of those getting married at heart and have been endowed with that ability of foresight, then I could see how this method could work. Single people can be so picky sometimes and will make up silly reasons to not like someone enough to spend the rest of their life with them. And by silly reasons, I mean, you can't have one of your non-negotiables be he has to be 6'5", and if you're a guy, it can't be she has to look just like Julia Roberts and have that same exact smile. They have to be realistic and substantial non-negotiables. So, for example, he has to be family-oriented, or she has to be funny and smart and carry a conversation on her own. You know what I mean? It's hard to remember that even Prince Charming will have his defects, holes in his socks or whatever. Are those defects just excuses that can be blown up to hide an underlying fear of commitment? Maybe, but fear of commitment and all that baggage that is surrounding it is something to explore in a later episode. So, how old is the right age for marriage? My dad is really fond of saying that he would have done much better in college and spent a lot more time studying instead of chasing skirt if he had been married during that time of his life. Back in 1947, the estimated median age for a person to marry for the first time was 24 for men and 20 for women. And that same statistic for early 2021 was up to ages 30 for men and 29 for women. In 1950, more than 75% of people over the age of 15 had been married at least once. In 2021, that stat is down to only 66%. This means that currently, if people even bother to tie the knot, they will more likely be in their 30s, well established and stuck in their ways. Common wisdom dictates that young people should wait to get married, at least until they finished their schooling, launched a promising career, and had a few sexual relationships, and found themselves, or whatever that means. And after all that, Prince Charming will ride up on his steed and his white steed and sweep you away. Or if you're a guy, Suzanne Summers will drive up in a white T-Bird a la American Graffiti. The underlying assertion is that all that experience will make them more mature and better able to form a lasting romantic attachment. This seems to me to be bad advice. That leads many people to end up wasting a lot of their best years, the years that they are most attractive, either stuck in relationships that end when their youth ends, or cruising through a series of short-term encounters with other lost individuals on their journeys to find themselves, which also happens to end right around the same time their youth ends, ironically. In my life, I've heard that advice given many times to young women around 20, only to have that same person badger that same young woman 4 or 5 years later with, well, why aren't you married yet? Meanwhile, those who got married or had to get married in their early 20s and who arrived to the altar amidst the laments of their families and friends, like, oh, they're too young, and the hush mutterings that, oh, their marriage will fail. For the most part, they stayed married, or that's what the statistics seem to indicate. In a study released earlier this year by the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia and the Wheatley Institution at Brigham Young University, using 3 large recent nationally representative data sets, researchers found that those who marry young in their early 20s are somewhat more likely to report that they are happy with their marriage and sexually satisfied compared to those who marry later in life. This does not include teen marriages, which are statistically almost destined to fail. Did you know that young marriages are called cornerstone marriages? Because the couple in question experienced most of life's formative challenges together. Surprisingly, and counter to those lamenters, capstone marriages, which is the opposite, involve those who wed after the bride and groom are well established financially and in their careers, end in divorce much more often than cornerstone marriages. Isn't that weird? I wonder how those statistics from the 1950s were affected by the couples having to get married. Did these marriages arranged by fate or divine providence help keep divorce rates low? It's hard to know because the people who back then had to get married but then had a great long marriage probably never even talked about what caused them to get married in the first place. While divorced people are always looking to blame something or someone other than themselves for their failed marriage. They often use that 50% statistic to make themselves feel better. Oh no, calling a divorce a failed marriage, that's a term that might get you in trouble in this world of 1984 styled vaporizing, except for now they call it canceling. Oh, how on the nose Mr. Orwell was. It chills me to the bone. Not calling it a failed marriage is like that 40% first marriage divorce statistic that I've been using. That stat is based on studies done by several reliable institutions. Statistical tricks have been employed to get that number up to 50%. I think to make divorce seem more common and thus a more acceptable option. Ironically, when people use this excuse to justify their own divorces, they're contributing to making the statistic even more true. It's like the snake devouring itself. I think that this has all been done for purely political reasons. Destabilizing an established institution leads to chaos, which benefits totalitarian despots and their goal of conquest. Wait, did that sound like something a crazy conspiracy nut would say? If you put what everyone has always told you about when to get married aside and really think about it, it makes more sense to grow and form your likes and dislikes together than to try to conform to someone with well-established preferences. That is, unless you can find someone with almost your exact same tastes in movies, cuisine, religion, and political philosophy. As people get older, their tastes become more cemented, their preferences become a fixed part of their personalities. That is why older single people have a much more difficult time finding a partner. It's like the popular idea that it's better to wait until you're in your late 30s to get married was all part of a demonic plan to make people so afraid of commitment that they might miss their chance at a solid, lifelong marriage. Saying that would make me sound like some kind of crazy conspiracy nut. Success at a marriage really comes down to the maturity level of the couple involved. Young couples must realize the challenges they will necessarily face by being young. But if you think about it, those challenges are better met by two working together than by one working all on their own. Instead of two apartments, your housing costs get cut in half, your individual buying power doubles, your ability to qualify for a loan gets a whole lot better with two salaries. Instead of having to do all the chores of normal daily life, like laundry, shopping, cooking, errands. Well, we women end up doing all of that. No, I'm just kidding, guys. That labor should also get divided. And by the way, these types of chores are a lot more fun when you're doing them with somebody or for someone you love. I remember reading about this psych study where they had a group of 10 people and they split them in half. So group A and group B were both given $50 individually. And group A was told to go and spend it on themselves. And group B was told to spend those $50 on somebody they love. They called them back after they used the $50. They called group A back, and group A recorded that they were happy, somewhat happy, and they were content with whatever they'd purchased for themselves. And when they called Group B was exponentially more happier than Group A was. They said that they were content, extremely happy in some cases. And the point is that we exist to love and serve other people. We want to do that. Giving happiness to other people makes us happy. So money that you would have spent going out with people, random people, on dates or hanging out at bars with friends looking for Mr. Right or Miss Right goes into a savings account or towards a down payment for a house. Time spent on all those frivolities gets redirected towards studies, charity work, or career advancement activities. And you should probably pause right now and check out Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. This is an age-old premise, you guys, a tale as old as time. People think that because their families object to them marrying young, this might weaken family ties. But really being young and immature in the kitchen or in finances or whatever would be a cause for sons and daughters to reach out to fathers and mothers for support and advice. Wouldn't this kind of contact only strengthen those family ties? People marrying older might have a more difficult time finding a partner, but they realize a different set of advantages. They, of course, must be more understanding because they will have to make a lot more concessions and be a lot more tolerant of established habits and tastes. However, their combined finances could make for a substantial socioeconomic jump. That is, unless, as is often the case, established people tend to want to keep their finances separate. And that's okay as long as this is discussed in advance of taking vows. When the couple is in sync with everything that we've talked about, all these realities, then their chances of staying together will get a whole lot better. Plus, having a partner to be there to rely on when life's inevitable curves get thrown at you, it can be worth the price of admission to have a committed partner by your side. So, because the maturity level of people varies so radically, really any time is the right time for marriage, as long as you both really love each other and truly understand the importance of the sacrament, the sacred commitment that you are making to each other. Taking vows in front of a group of people important to you is also helpful in forging that promise into something that will last the test of time. Wow! Thank you for listening to this episode. I'm looking forward to reading all of your comments and questions. Please take a minute to subscribe and like the podcast on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and leave your 5-star review. It will really help the show grow. Don't forget to follow me on YouTube, on Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you beforehand. I'm Juliana Omi, and this has been Dear Lovers. Until next time, Ephesians 5:28 and 29.